Hey guys, hope you got a lot of time. It's going to take me about 30 minutes to tell this story. It's like 10 chapters. It's really good. First though, just a little snippet out of one of these chapters. A lot of this I skipped because it's basically a lot of this king was wicked and just led everybody into idol worship and horrible king. This guy was a 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 bad king. This guy was a bad king. It's like 10 kings, and I didn't want to bore you with all that, but basically they're all a bunch of crap. Okay, but in the middle of this, there's this one little tidbit. It's pretty fun. You know how Elijah, J comes before Elisha, S. So Elijah was the first famous prophet. Elisha was the guy that took his place. Well, Elisha didn't have nearly as cool of a go away. He didn't go away in a chariot with fire. He just basically got sick and died. That's the Bible just says. Elisha was suffering from illness from which he died. Pretty uneventful. But here, just a little bit further down, just a couple of verses, they said that there were these Moabite raiders, and they would come every spring they would come into the city and like raid, which would be like go and take all your stuff, kind of like robbers. And there's some guys out there burying somebody. They were burying somebody, and how did that work? The raiders were there. They were burying a man, and suddenly they saw these raiders coming. They were running for him. They're going to rob him, so they just threw the body into this random grave, right? It just so happened that was Elisha's grave, and when the dead guy's body touched Elisha's bones, he came back to life. So he had an uneventful death, but his bones made someone come back to life. So if I'm ever out dead and you just happen to be around Elisha's tomb, you can throw me in there, or if somebody else you know is dead, throw them in there and they'll come back to life. I seriously doubt anybody knows where his bones are, but there it is. Okay, so like I said, just king after king being horrible, horrible, horrible. And it talks a lot about how not only the kings, but all the people, they followed the practices of the other nations. They secretly did things against the Lord. Secrets are always bad when you do secret sins. They did wicked things that provoked the Lord's anger. They worshipped idols. Though the Lord had said, you shall not do this. The Lord had warned Israel against those things. He said, turn from your evil ways. He sent the priests and the prophets, but they would not listen. He sent all kinds of prophets like Jonah and Isaiah and Jeremiah. They would all say, man, get right with God. It's important. And they would just, the Bible calls them stiff-necked. They're like, no, I'm not going to do what you say. They have a really stiff neck. And it's bad. We don't ever have a stiff neck towards God. We want to always have a soft heart, not a hard heart. We want to listen to what God says. So, but they would not listen. And they worship the stars. So, there's like these things in the paper called it's called astronomy or astrology or one of those, anyways. And like they can tell your future by looking at the stars, or palm readers, they can tell your future by looking at your palm, and all of that is of the devil. And that's what they did, and God made God really angry. So that's to come out. Stay far away from any fortune telling, anything that has anything to do with fortune telling or sorcery. I've never watched a Harry Potter movie because it has to do with sorcery, and the Lord hates sorcery and witchcraft, and I don't have anything to do with anything that has stuff to do with what God hates, right? So therefore the Lord rejected all the people of Israel, and he afflicted them and gave them into the hands of plunderers and thrust them from his presence. So basically, he's like, okay, you guys don't want to do what I tell you to, or be me to be your God. He basically, at the very beginning, from Abraham, said, I'll be your God, and you could be my people, my special people. I'll take care of you. And all the people of Israel said, no, we don't want you to be our God. We want idols to be our God. So he's like, fine, you can have them. Let's see how good they take care of you, right? So what happened is they all get exiled. So army comes in, totally kicks all their butts, takes a whole bunch of them, and takes them to his own nation of Assyria. And it's basically Egypt all over again, and they're going to be slaves, and they're not going to be free. And there's some that remain behind, and some of them started resettling in the city of Samaria, and there are not very many of them. And it's interesting that even the Assyrian king, who does not serve God, he understands that they're not serving God right. It's really interesting. He says when they first lived there, some of the guys that were left over, they did not worship the Lord. So the Lord sent lions among them, and they killed some of the people. It was reported to the king of Syria, the people you deported and are resettling in the town of Samaria, they do not know what the God of the country requires, because he sent lions to kill them. So the king of Assyria, hey, who was a preacher for the guys from Israel? Who was a priest? And somebody raised his hand. Okay, you need to go down there and teach them how to serve God, because they don't know how to do it, obviously, because they're getting eaten by lions. So the king of Assyria gave the orders, have one of the priests we took captive go back. So one of the priests that went back to Samaria, and he taught them how to worship the Lord. It's pretty obvious. They don't know what to do, right? So God said, you must always be careful to keep the decrees and ordinances of the laws I command you. Do not worship other gods. Do not forget the covenant I made. You're my special people. Worship the Lord, and then he will deliver you. But they would not listen, and they continued to practice their wickedness. And to this day, the children and their grandchildren continue to do wickedness. And that's what we were talking about last time, is that the reason the Lord would send someone to destroy a nation that was worshiping idols is that they would teach their kids, they would teach their kids, and there'd be all these people that would end up serving idols. So God didn't want that. He wanted people to serve the Lord. So he would stop it before it became millions of people serving idols. He would kind of call it a purge, like vomiting, like getting rid of the gross stuff that's in your body. And then when you get really sick, sometimes you kind of like that. God had to get rid of all the gross stuff that was in the world, floods and stuff like that. Okay, so yeah, this is gonna go really long. I haven't even got started. That was kind of a setup. So we'll talk about Hezekiah tomorrow. But basically, today was the cool story about Elisha and his bones, and the downfall of Israel, how they just keep being stupid. But there's hope. Tomorrow there's hope. We're going to talk about a king called Hezekiah.